I'd begin to say something and I'd feel the stuttering come on in my mouth. I taught myself how to just pause and restart what I was going to say because that usually got over the hump of stuttering. And so I actually ended up getting that from a few people. They just thought I didn't know what I wanted to say a lot, which was very frustrating to hear. But stuttering is so not talked about that people have no idea it's a stutter when they hear it because there's so many different ways of stuttering.
So my question is, do I cut it out when I edit because I edit out ums and like and silence all the time, so it sounds more natural and more pleasant to the audience? But with you, do I keep it in for originality and authenticity, or do I remove it to be like everybody else?
This is such a great question, and when I did speech therapy, they literally how I viewed it in my brain is they were training me into how to sound like a robot and not a human being.
Some people may have a stutter and not can't fix it that much either. So I can't comment on that. But do you feel like there are a lot of stutterers that are able to work on it or did not working on it and not just accepting the situation and moving on?
Mind frame of that of like feeling broken was just very hard for me. And speech therapy always just it made me feel very bad about myself.
And I think that's what happens with a lot of disabled people that they keep living in a bubble and it's like comforting and such. But like when the real world hits you, it hurts you really hard. So you go back to the way things were. And it's just like, sometimes I feel like you're pushing a narrative of just accepting stutterers as is, and I don't want to push that person that stutters shouldn't go to speech therapy or try because
I strongly believe that the reason why I'm doing Proud Stutter is to shift societal norms around speech have and helps society be more accepting of speech differences because like I said, not everyone can cure their stuttering through speech therapy. Some people do speech therapy for years and they still have a stutter. Get so tired because of the amount of work I put into hiding it. And so I kind of just decided to just, and this is just my personal journey to be like, F it, I'm just gonna stutter because I'd rather do that than.
you have made the second week in May Stuttering Awareness Week. You are trying to do one in Denver and even Australia. What was the feedback like from the government and the stuttering community? Hello, welcome to my podcast, Two Mics, One Joe Suits. I am Joe Suits, and I'll be giving a mic to Maya. Maya is a proud stutterer who is leading a movement on including stutterers into the spotlight, even starting a Stutterer Awareness Week in San Francisco and pushing to other cities, then state, then country, then the world, then Mars. She hosts a podcast called Proud Stutter, where she talks about stuttering. Before we chat, I want everyone to know that I was born deaf, so I have a speech impediment. My speech is maybe 95% perfect now. It was horrible growing up. It may be hard to understand me at times, but I was unable to pronounce my TH sounds or T sounds or sh sounds or straight mumbling, especially if I'm tired or stressed. You can look at my previous episodes to notice if I ever needed a time to mumble or mispronounce, then this is the episode to do it. I also know it's not the same as stuttering, but we have a lot of similarities. Enough about me. It took you 29 years to come out as a stutterer to your friends and family and the world. Did you feel you had your mask fall off, or was it more like your friends saying we already knew, but we just didn't say anything?
I got a lot of different responses. I think one of the responses that stuck out to me was from my aunt who has known me my entire life, of course, and she had no idea that I had a stutter. She actually thought that I just paused when I spoke a lot because that was the mechanism I used a lot throughout my life to hide my stutter is when I'd begin to say something and I'd feel the stuttering come on in my mouth. I taught myself how to just pause and restart what I was going to say because that usually got over the hump of stuttering. And so I actually ended up getting that from a few people. They just thought I didn't know what I wanted to say a lot, which was very frustrating to hear.
Okay, that makes total sense now. Okay. I would think your family would know, but that's interesting.
Yeah, I mean, my immediate family knew, of course, but I feel like I kept it so hidden that even someone like my aunt, who she's not my immediate aunt, she's
Hmm.
my mom's cousin's mom, and so I didn't see her a lot, but it's just interesting to get because I had never thought that that's what people thought of my stuttering. I just people assumed they knew I had a stutter, but stuttering is so not talked about that people have no idea it's a stutter when they hear it because there's so many different ways of stuttering.
So throughout your life, you're thinking that you just were a slow talker, but everyone thinks you were like kind of dumb, I guess, and
Yeah.
just restart everything.
Mhm. I know. It's
Well,
yeah,
that's
yeah, it's very horrible.
it goes great into what I want to ask next. Is that you say you pause a lot, and then other stutterers, I don't know about you, use the ums and likes as a clutch to fill in gaps of silence. So my question is, do I cut it out when I edit because I edit out ums and likes and silence all the time, so it sounds more natural and more pleasant to the audience? But with you, do I keep it in for originality and authenticity, or do I remove it to be like everybody else?
This is such a great question, and it's one of my favorite topics because I feel like there's still so much exploration around this question that I'm still exploring myself. And so I don't have like a perfect answer for you, but what
Hmm.
I can say is that when I edit, because my show is all about stuttering, I
Hmm.
tend to leave a lot of the ums, likes, pauses, and stuttering in. But I do want to say that I do tend to, every once in a while, I'll edit out like an if I hear that it's not attached to the stutter. And so you really have to be someone that stutters yourself in order to really, edit the episode that features a stuttering in a way that makes sure they come off as authentic.
Hmm.
However, there are some people who stutter that will ask you to edit out their stutter or edit out their ums and likes. And so it's really depending on the person you're interviewing. And so some, and as you just said, even people who don't stutter, they also have sometimes filler words come up. And so
Hmm.
it's really just what I encourage editors to do is, if they can, is to always ask, like, how would you like me to edit your speech? Would you like me to, so like that can really just help you, I guess, make it easier on yourself, that instead of making the call yourself, you can ask the person that you're
So how would you like me to edit you?
I I of course, when I stutter, please leave my stutters in. And
Hmm.
yeah, I think just leaving in, all the nuances of my speech. So feel free to edit based on the content, but as far as like me speaking, I think just try to leave in as much of the colorful stuff as possible. I like to describe my stutter as colorful.
Yeah, so like you mentioned, like just in the last minute that you have different arms. So you have the arms that's part of the your stuttering, but then you also have arms that just part of natural like talking. And it was weird for me to hear it because like you can differentiate when it's a stutter versus when you're just like blanking for a minute.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes I'm not perfect, so that sometimes I can't tell every time, but I can usually tell. And then as I'm talking about I feel like I'm saying it more and more. But it's
It'd be so
definitely,
hard for me to edit now. 'Cause now I don't know which is appropriate and what you're just yeah.
you kind of just have to use your gut, and I'm giving you free reign to to edit
Yeah.
as you want, but just be thoughtful. It's all about thoughtfulness, and I think I don't want to put the high expectation to editors to, be perfect in how they edit someone with a speech difference, but just be thoughtful about it, right? Like we're having this conversation now, and I'm hoping that it'll just be in the back of their mind. And that's all I'm asking for, is to just have this extra layer of thoughtfulness, because people are very, you may not know it, but someone you're interviewing might have a speech impediment, and they've never been asked before whether or not they want to include that in their interview or not.
So am I the first person to ever ask you about this problem or this
So
style, I guess?
I was just interviewed by this woman that runs global podcast editors, and she just started a YouTube channel, and so we had a similar conversation for her community, which is editors across the world. And so she did ask me that. And so I'm hoping that that'll just be an industry standard now, which is great.
Just to clarify, meaning just to ask the person how they would like to be edited and then make the edit according to how they like to be perceived to the world.
Yeah, I think that's a good start. And I know it's tricky because it might add an extra layer of time. And, as independent podcasters, time is definitely, we don't have a lot of it. But I think, yeah, I think if we just start opening up that conversation and setting expectations, so if they ask you something that is beyond what you can do, just having an honest conversation around it. I think that is just important in itself. Like you might not be able to accommodate everything they're asking for, but at least you can have that conversation.
I mean, just me thinking of the editing now, it could save me more time because I don't have to edit as much out because it's all natural.
That's true.
So
Exactly.
it's a win-win. So let's throw some facts out there. So it's estimated that about 1% of the population has a stutter. That means more than 70 million people worldwide, more than 3 million people in the US, and close to 14,000 in San Diego. 1 in 20 children will have some sort of stutter. It usually starts around the ages of 2 and 7, and 70 to 90% of those children will grow out of it before adulthood. So most kids grow out of it. Any kids who continue to stutter like Maya are likely to stutter into adulthood and, into later years. So we adults, stutterers are in the minority. Most kids outgrow it. Some people like Maya have a stutter due to genetic. So I have a question for you. So maybe you can't talk for the whole population, but is it possible for a person that stutters not be able to stutter with speech therapy?
I know there has been some people that are able to use tools that help them with fluency, but it's very important to say that there's no cure for stuttering.
Hmm.
I think with speech therapy, how I view speech therapy, and this is just me, I know a lot of people find a lot of value in speech therapy, but for me and what I need and what I've experienced in speech therapy is they've just taught me how to hide it better. And through hiding it, I feel like I'm hiding my authentic self. And when I did speech therapy, they literally, how I viewed it in my brain is they were training me into how to sound like a robot and not a human being. And so I know there are amazing speech therapists out there that have a different mentality. It's all about acceptance and being more confident, and that's great. But for me, when I'm seeking therapy, I'm not currently seeing a therapist, but if I were to find a therapist, I would want a therapist that would focus more on my anxiety and mental health rather than my speech. So there are speech therapists that specialize in both, but I feel like for me, since I don't have a lot of money, I'd want to focus more on like my mental health if it came to speech or to therapy.
No, I just find it a little weird with when you say to speak like a robot because when I went to speech therapy and like I talked really badly and then they would have you talk really well, but like you mentioned as a robot voice, but I felt like the robot voice is not supposed to be you. It's supposed to be like, oh, you can talk proper this way, and then over time you slowly become a regular you, like become part of your personality that you're constantly trying to talk this way, and then over time and habit, you talk better. Like when had trouble speaking my th sounds and sh sound, at first it was really hard because you're so used to speaking one way, and then you have like, oh, now you have to speak this other way because it's hard to change a habit. So is it? Trying to think of a question. Like it's hard to say like shouldn't you kind of speak like a robot and then slowly over time become a better non-stutterer before it's just accepting a stutterer and then not trying to fix it? 'Cause it's hard to force the world to accept a stutterer if they almost can't understand you. Because like when I went to therapy, I remember like when I was 15, I was like pretending to be like the shit and everyone would understand me and like I was perfect, but I really wasn't. And the therapist sat me down. It's like, like your language skills are shit. Like no one can understand you. Even if you're the smartest person in the world, if they can understand you, they'll just dismiss you. And like you gotta put in the work to like really want to get to that level that fit out to part of society. So like I think I needed that serious pep talk. And but I feel like sometimes I feel like you're pushing a narrative of a stutterer is good, but without really working on it. Like I don't want to seem like I'm coming disrespectful, but also I don't want to seem like some people may have a stutter and not can't fix it that much either. So I can't comment on that. But do you feel like there are a lot of stutterers that are able to work on it or did not working on it and not just accepting the situation and moving on? Because like you mentioned that you just stopped therapy, and like I feel like therapy would help.
I love this conversation because I've never really had it before, and I think it's super important. I
Mm-hmm.
think speech therapy is a very personal experience, and for me, I was I I never wanted to go to speech therapy. I was always okay with my speech. It was my parents who thought there was something wrong with me and that I needed to fix something. And
Mm-hmm.
so that mind frame of that of like feeling broken was just very hard for me. And speech therapy always just it made me feel very bad about myself. And it's interesting because when I would go to speech therapy, I wouldn't stutter, and my speech therapist would like try to get me to stutter so she could fix it. So it was just a very weird,
Really? That's so weird.
yeah, it's a very weird, and I still haven't fully digested it. Like I feel like I've tried really hard to ignore that part of my life just because it was so hard for me, but I'm now starting to like peel the layers of that experience and trying to like put language to it. And I do think it's all about the person and what their goals are in speech therapy. Like I could easily go to speech therapy and work on like more of my acceptance of my stutter, in addition to like if I'm in a certain situations, what tools do I have access to, you know, maybe speak with more confidence and not let my stutter get in the way of like what I want to say. So I think speech therapy should be very based on the individual's goals, and then the speech therapy uses their training to like help them through those goals, whether it is to sound more fluent, whether it is, to get more tools for certain situations. And I also want to say that there are a lot of people who stutter out there that can't hide their stutter at all. And it's just part of their speech. And I think for those people, we really have to start being more accepting of people who stutter, because some people, like I, can sound very fluent one day and not the other day. So there's just very, like, there are instances where I do pass as fluent, but like I said, there are a lot of people out there that stutter very prominently and their voices are not being heard, and that's a problem.
I'm gonna disagree with you in terms of the speech therapy improving your confidence because that's not their job really. Their job is to fix your speech because a speech therapy, like you would go to a therapist if your confidence wasn't high. Like you have to go to different people for that.
Yeah, I mean, I think um speech therapy, there are certain speech therapy therapists that do infuse both, like they do help with goal setting and like fluency. But I'm just talking from my own experience. Like I just wish I had a therapist that asked me more about what I wanted out of speech therapy, rather than them making me feel that I was a broken child.
I understand. I think it's hard at that age of what is happening. You just like like I was telling my story of 15, thinking I was the shit, but I really wasn't, and like I'm just a naive person. So I do get it. It's just difficult because I don't like. We both know that talking well is. If you don't talk well, the person gonna judge you like you were talking about your aunt of them thinking that you're slow, but you're highly intelligent. And from doing research, you have very great jobs and you do all these great things. But if someone like your aunt is talking to you and she, oh, she's dumb because she doesn't know she has a stutter. So it's just, do agree that it's up to the person, become more of a, I need reality to hit me versus living in a bubble. And I think that's what happens with a lot of disabled people, that they keep living in a bubble and it's like comforting and such. But like when the real world hits you, it hurts you really hard. So you go back to the way things were. And it's just like, sometimes I feel like you're pushing a narrative of just accepting stutterers as is, and I don't want to push that person that stutters shouldn't go to speech therapy or try, because I know you had a guest that did Facebook, and part of their insurance is to do speech therapy, which is great. So, like, do you do speech therapy? Do you accept your stutterer, your stuttering? Like, it's either kind of like one or the other kind of saying. Like, do you see where I'm trying to
Yeah.
create a
Yeah, and I do really want to be careful about not saying speech therapy is bad, because that is not my intention at all. I think speech therapy, like I've heard from so many people saying that speech therapy changed their life for the better. I just had a different experience, and so I think as people who stutter and as people with different speech impediments, it's so complex. Like our stories are so like we all have different stories and different relationships with our speech based on, our experiences. And so my message is like speech therapy is is wonderful for people that like want to become more fluent or just want to help with coming to terms with their stutter. Like there's a lot of amazing benefits of speech therapy. But then there's also people who stutter that don't want speech therapy, and that's okay too. Like both scenarios are totally okay, and I think that I do not want to perpetuate the narrative that speech therapy is bad because I think it can be wonderful. I'm just speaking from my own experience that
Yeah, like I'm gonna disagree with you again where you say that there's stutterers that don't go to speech therapy, and I feel like you should go. Like you don't accept someone that's an alcoholic, but they're not putting in the work to go, or they're depressed and not putting in the work to feel better. It's just not. I think it's easy to accept it, but like I think they have to put the work in too to be a better version of themselves. Like you mentioned at the beginning of the podcast that you can cure stuttering. There'll be people that won't be as good at like you, for example. But I feel like if you're putting in the work, it will feel a lot better. I think therapy is important to do and not just accept it as is because I feel like you're just pushing the goalpost of just accept me and have the world accept me for the way I am versus trying to be better at this speech therapy. Also know that the younger you are that you go to therapy, the easier it is for your whole life to speak better because if you go to speech therapy at 30, you've been learning 30 years of maybe bad habits and it's really harder to learn. I think it's just, I don't know like the percent of people that are not trying to put in the work, but I just don't like the narrative of if you have a stutter or impediment not to go to speech therapy. I think speech therapy is very important. I think in the real world it's very crucial to people having people respecting you and wanting to talk to you and form relationships and all of that.
yeah. So is your question what sorry, what was your question?
I don't think I had a question. I just kind of just agreeing that I feel like people should go to speech therapy. The only thing I don't know about is money. I mean, I think that could play into. I know therapy just for mental health can be very expensive. So now
Mhm.
I should have done research, but I did not. So I don't know if speech therapy even. I'm gonna guess it's not covered by any insurance. To that could be a barrier to people not getting therapy.
Yeah, I
Do you know anything
definitely
about that?
yeah, I mean, I can only speak from my own experience. I've never had insurance that included speech therapy. I know that a lot of schools, at least the school I went to in elementary school, had a speech therapist, but she didn't specialize in stuttering, so she didn't really know what to do with me. And so that's why my mom put me in private speech therapy. And so, yeah, I mean, I think speech therapy, I'm not saying speech therapy is bad, and I'm also not saying that everyone who stutters should go to speech therapy. I think it depends on that person and what they feel will help them. Um, and I strongly believe that the reason why I'm doing Proud Stutter is to shift societal norms around speech have and helps society be more accepting of speech differences because like I said, not everyone can cure their stuttering through speech therapy. Some people do speech therapy for years and they still have a stutter. So, in for those people, that's I think it's important to make the world a safer space for people who stutter because for me, it's just I feel so exhausted the more I hide my stutter. Like I just feel horrible around it. Like sometimes I just get so tired because of the amount of work I put into hiding it. And so I kind of just decided to just, and this is just my personal journey to be like, F it, I'm just gonna stutter because I'd rather do that than keep on trying to hide it. It's just, I'm sick of it, honestly. And everyone's different.
Do you feel like you're wearing a mask to not stutter?
Um,
Like when,
y-
let's say you're in a professional environment, like do you feel like you're wearing a mask and at home you just kind of become yourself?
I think I've trained myself for a long time to not stutter, so I'm still trying to find out who I really am and like what my true authentic self is. And so feel like ever since I did try the podcast or release of the podcast, I have been feeling more comfortable stuttering every day and at work. Like they're so accepting of my stutter. But yeah, even in settings where I have to speak publicly, I still feel the pressure to sound fluent and to not stutter. That still happens.
I want to talk about I think there's like a fine line between discrimination and ableism versus not being suitable for a job. So I've heard you were given some bad reviews to your speech stuttering in a public relations setting. I major in public relations, so I know that communication needs to be superb and precise. You know, one word and it could backfire and lose this company thousands or even millions of dollars. So the question is, why is ableism discriminatory when it's specifically a field that requires excellent and fast communication versus someone that isn't fit for a person, for example, that stutters?
So the question, sorry, can you repeat that again?
Yeah. The question is, when is it discriminatory that you stutter versus someone that you're not suitable for the job? Because I know there's a very fine line of it, and I want to get your thoughts of.
Yeah, that's a tough one. I honestly don't really know how to answer that. I think all in all industries should be accepting of stuttering. Like I know people that stutter that work at call centers and it's their job to just talk to people all day.
No, I just think that sometimes I feel like the disability committee pushes the ableism argument too strong, where some jobs are just not suitable for someone that had this disability. Like, if a disabled person can't do everything, I- but at the same time, they also have to prove that they can do it. So you mentioned, you know, like you have a stutter and now you're doing have a successful podcast. That's really awesome. Like a person that doesn't stutter and be like, how can a stutterer have a podcast? But then like here you are killing you. It's just sometimes I do feel the disability community pushes ableism argument too strong, and sometimes there are just some fields we can't be in. Like I can't be an astronaut. I can't force them to make the I can't force them to make the spacecraft wheelchair accessible. That's just
Mhm.
unlikely. And I think it's sometimes we have to accept that there are barriers, and sometimes there are logical reasons that we can transcend them, but sometimes there's just a barrier that we can never cross just because it would never be able to. Like I accept I would never go to space. You know, I'm not gonna like camp in front of NASA and like demand it. You know, I did accept that.
I would respond to that by just saying like the reason I'm so vocal about the PR industry and being more inclusive is because I've done it. And so I think there's an endless list of things we can be pushing for, but it all really comes down to what you want to put your energy around. And so if there's someone that's always wanted to go to space and that's their thing and they want to make that their campaign around going to space, then awesome. So I think it's just, it all comes down to where we want to put our energy towards and what we feel, in our hearts we want to push for.
So I mentioned earlier, but I will repeat it to refresh people's memories. You have made the second week in May Stuttering Awareness Week. You are trying to do one in Denver and even Australia. What was the feedback like from the government and the stuttering community?
Yeah, this it's been completely positive since then. I've had people, like all of the people that spoke in San Francisco, for example, said it was one of the best experiences of their life speaking in front of City Hall, ahead of the resolution passing. And after San Francisco passed that resolution, I had two people from Colorado saying they wanted to do the same thing in Denver and Boulder. And so now there there is a plan in place to pass a local resolution both in Denver and Colorado to recognize International Stuttering Awareness Day in those cities on October the 22nd.
How was the government reaction to it?
So in San Francisco, the person that we worked with, Dina Preston, who passed the resolution, he was super excited about it. Everyone, we had unanimous support from all the supervisors to support it. So yeah, it's been very positive from the government.
So I know you have an extensive background in policy and public relation, which is kind of perfect for what you're doing now. So what work goes into having an awareness week?
So a lot of work went into passing the resolution. I think I worked on it for about 3 months, and I worked with the author's office on um, writing the language around the resolution, and I worked with the stuttering community on it. I also planned 3 events around the awareness week just to be more engaging and have people learn about stuttering more. And we also did a community and press rally ahead of the vote, which attracted a lot of media attention. And so that was 3 months of planning, and yeah, it was just it did take a lot of my time. I had a week where I didn't have a full-time job, so I just dedicated that entire week to preparing for that huge rally. And so, yeah, it definitely took a lot of time.
No, I mean you're doing really great work and you're a pioneer in the stuttering community. So I feel like a lot of stutterers could are really thanking you.
Yeah, I mean, it's been such a great experience. I only planned to do one season, and then the response was so positive that I decided that I wanted to just keep going. And so I do it because the people are in the stuttering community really love it. And I loved doing it as well.
So before I take the mic away from you, is there anything you want to say? Promote any words of wisdom? The winning lottery numbers? The mic is all yours.
The last thing I want to say is we are doing an awareness campaign around stuttering launching on October 1st. And it's going to be leading up to International Stuttering Awareness Day, which is Saturday, October 22nd. And so the campaign will be every week, we'll be sharing content around stuttering. And on every Friday, we'll be having a raffle where people can enter and win stuttering related art.
Okay, so thank you so much, Mario, for giving me your time and your valuable information. Thank you, everyone, for listening and watching, and I'll catch everyone next time. Bye.